What's up, everybody? Welcome back into a brand new episode of PFN Daily, your daily NFL news and analysis live show here on youtube.com/Pro Football Network. I'm your host, as always, Cody Rourke, joined alongside today by my co-host, as always, the jean jacket extraordinaire, fashion icon, the lover of the Pat McAfee show, like myself, the lover of all things, all beverages, hot and cold. He is Tommy Garrett. Tommy, what's up, my man? Hey, like I said, I love the jean jacket. But I also love the shirt that you have on so far here today.
Little,
what? I love it.
That was, like I said, I've never watched a WrestleMania, but like that moment right there, like that's one of the greatest pictures. Like, the minute I saw that happen, I was like, yeah, that's going to be a meme, and I needed that in my life. When they came out with the shirt for it, I was like, yeah, press the order button, take my money. I don't need any more. I need that shirt in my life.
Yeah. Shout out to Bubba Gumpino for putting that out there for us to be able to see. Tommy
Canadian
obviously
sensation.
Has the shirt. Dude, I love Gump. Gump is a good dude, man. He just
really is.
He's funny. He's like the Canadian version of Spicoli with a beard.
Ooh.
You know? Yeah, that would be a good one. I don't think many people watching this show, I don't even think they know who Jeff Spicoli is. And if they don't, what a sad existence that they must live if that's the case here. But anyways, Tom, we got a lot to talk about here today. We got suspensions being handed down by the National Football League on several key players. How might that affect the Arizona Cardinals in the long run? Also, investigations that have been ongoing about the Browns and Hugh Jackson's allegations of tanking have come back, and we're eager to see what the independent investigation yielded in its results, whether or not the Browns are guilty or not guilty. There are a lot to break down here today, not to mention some other roster personnel moves and some of the fallout from the NFL draft, including how it's impacted several teams that have quarterbacks on their rosters as is. So, Tommy, a lot to get into here today. Let's waste no time. Let's jump into it here. Let's talk about the news of the day so far. Obviously, yesterday it was announced that Arizona Cardinals star wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins will be suspended 6 games in 2022 for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing substance policy. Stemming back to something, he released a statement saying that he was made aware of it in November. Ironically, Tommy, what month is it right now? It is May.
May, yeah. Wow, I had to think about that for a second.
That's a long time. So he was initially made aware that this happened to me. Why all of a sudden did we just find out about this right now? That to me, I think, is very interesting.
Yeah, and it's also very curious. I know he's very shocking. Like, he put out the statement where he said, I am shocked and confused. I'm very mindful of what I put in my body and always have been, taking a holistic approach. I'm working with my team to investigate how this could have happened. But even as careful as I have been, clearly I wasn't careful enough. For that, I apologize to Cardinals fans, my teammates, and the entire Cardinals organization. I never want to let my team down. I fully intend to get to the bottom of this. As soon as I have more information, I will share it. And yeah, that's the whole big question is, where did this stem from? Was this a tainted product? Was it was he working with a doctor off the side that wasn't necessarily team specific? Like, no one's really sure like where this came from. I mean, I'm sure we'll find something out later on. But yeah, it kind of came as a bit of a surprise. That's for sure.
I feel like anytime something like this happens, we always get the statement, kind of the same generic statement. Like, I'm always aware of what I put in my body. Well, clearly you weren't aware enough.
Yeah.
And I will say this, though. The amount of supplements that these guys take, it was like, oh, yeah, these guys are just big natural freaks. Like, no, there's some supplements that are being taken.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
You have to be careful with some of the ingredients. Like, NFL players, they're taught coming into the league, make sure you read the label on everything and make sure you double check to make sure it's not on the NFL's banned list, right? Because some things, like, even in the UFC, there was like Toradol for John Bones Jones. And for him, apparently, he was having a lot of, manhood issues in terms of being able to maybe, eventually have a kid, low sperm cell count, things like that. So he's taking Toradol, which obviously pops up as a performance-enhancing drug, which, obviously in the NFL is different. The MLB, the NBA, UFC. I mean, the UFC and boxing is such a heavy regulated sport when it comes to
when you get into USADA and things like that, it's a totally different minefield in terms of what's allowed, what isn't allowed. And a lot of it too is like there's some labs where some of these products come from where you've got to be careful. There are some times where we'll all come back and see, okay, this is like a tainted batch of product that came out. It's not the first time where things like that have happened. So it's whether or not it was intentional, it all comes down to the whole thing. Like, you've got to be careful of what you're doing. Like, at the end of the day, it does come down to the individual player, whether or not they knowingly or unknowingly chose to do this. It is what it is. The thing with DeAndre Hopkins, like, I think he'd have a little bit more, I guess, better eye in the public if he would have had a better season last year. Did miss 3 games last year due to hamstring injury, and then missed the final 4 weeks after suffering an MCL sprain in week 14. Also missed their wild card game. Only had just under 600 yards and 8 touchdowns and 42 catches, which is actually a bit of a shock after having 1,400 yards in his first year with Arizona Cardinals after they traded David Johnson. Still one of the stupidest moves I've seen happen in a long time, and it really just makes that trade for Marquise Brown look even more important. After losing Christian Kirk, you couldn't afford then to lose Christian Kirk and DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 games of the season, especially in this division where you've got to come out to a hot start, especially if the San Francisco 49ers looks like they are going to be able to hold on to Deebo Samuel. That puts them still up there at the top of the division, right there along the Los Angeles Rams. The Cardinals can't afford to fall behind, and not having DeAndre Hopkins on the field, that's going to impact this team. Kyler Murray was not the same quarterback when he didn't have DeAndre Hopkins. Granted, he was also dealing with his own injury at the time, but A.J. Green wasn't necessarily able to become that number 1 for this team. They couldn't figure out how they wanted to utilize Rondale Moore in this offense too, which I'm sure that'll get a better turn in this season. But yeah, it's going to be tough for the Arizona Cardinals. They're in a bad situation, but at least they have a number 1 on this team in Marquise Brown, who's going to put together probably a sensational season, get off to a hot start because they're going to need it. Hopefully that connection from Oklahoma really kind of carries forward after all these years.
Well, I'm guessing that the Cardinals knew this was coming, which is also the reason they facilitated the trade for Hollywood Brown, which is a great trade there, by the way. Jan Paul says, holistic medicine are natural sources, and most drugs come from natural sources, but designed to maximize its effects. Painkillers come from poppy seeds. He says, poppy seeds are used as a source for some painkillers. Going back to the olden days, opium, like that was a huge thing that was used way back. And now
we also used to use leeches too, and we thought that was a good idea. There's, as long as no one's either doing panchakarma and these other holistic medications, like do whatever you gotta do with your body.
Panchakarma might be the way of life, Tommy. Like maybe
no.
If Aaron Rodgers has another MVP season, will you embrace panchakarma possibly?
Absolutely not. I'm not playing in the NFL for the Green Bay Packers. I am just as comfortable being productive. I don't think my output of articles is going to change sitting down, whether or not I'm doing a geyser out of the top end and the bottom end. Like I'm good.
Maybe maybe you should make a bet with somebody here in the company. Maybe you challenge Matthew Canada.
Dude, I will do
put a wager together and have him
do some dumb things. Don't get me wrong. But that's one thing I'm
you draw the line at panchakarma, but not like full sending it into a tornado. Like
I have control. Okay, you know what? You bring a good point.
I see. Yeah, I know the lines that are drawn here. Hollywood and Trey McBride. The Trey McBride move was very interesting in my opinion, considering the re-signing of Zach Ertz and Max Williams at the tight end position. So for me, it's like, all right, the Max Williams one, you can make an argument. Okay, maybe he's just got this year, and maybe they have an out after this year, and then Trey McBride becomes a number 2 guy, but.
I like Trey McBride. I really do. And I wonder if you're going to run Steve a little more like 12 personnel when they don't have DeAndre Hopkins out there. It just wasn't necessarily in the Cardinals' MO. Like Cliff Kingsbury's never been that type of person. He wants to run a ton of 3 wide and 4 wide personnel sets. The Cardinals for the past couple of years have been like one of the top 2 teams along with the Buffalo Bills in percentage of plays with 4 wide receivers on the field. So they want to get speed. They want to be vertical, get playmakers in space. I love the move of Trey McBride. He was my number 1 tight end coming out of Colorado State. So I think he's a great player. But when you have Zach Ertz just re-signed to a deal, it's going to be difficult for him to get onto the field soon. And also, like, learning the tight end position, like, it's one of the most difficult positions to learn in the NFL. Because not only do you have to be proficient as a pass catcher and a route runner, but you've also got to learn not just the plays as a receiver, but also the blocking schemes. How are you going to take on some of these defensive tackles, some of these defensive ends in the NFL, whether run a 3-4, whether they run a 4-3? They've got to go on against some of these best players in the NFL, and also one of the most important positions in terms of where we're seeing the money of these teams going. Edge rushers making a ton of cash out there. I don't think Trey McBride is going to be that inline style, so he's going to get a little bit more of a benefit trying to get out there in space. But like I said, they have some other options. Max Williams a little bit more underrated last year. It was just because Zach Ertz came in and just had a fantastic season. You're going to expect him to be a really big winner if there is a quote-unquote winner from this whole DeAndre Hopkins situation early on. Zach Ertz is going to have to carry a lot of the passing work, especially inside the red zone.
Well, you talked about, winners, right? Well, I can tell you who's a loser. And that's obviously Hugh Jackson's allegations that the Browns were taking. Yeah. Independent investigation came back, and the league said that Jackson initially agreed to meet with investigators, but ultimately he did not, after claiming that the Browns had approached him about tanking to lose games to better their draft positioning. The NFL also came out with a statement and said that Jimmy Haslam was interviewed, other current and former members of the team, and the Browns also provided a lot of documentation there. So I think the fact that Hugh Jackson made these allegations and all of a sudden would not show up to meet with investigators says everything you need to know about this. And not to mention, this is a guy who openly admitted to, committing tax fraud on Twitter. So it's like, Come on.
That was so dumb. Yeah. The whole thing, like the NFL is investigating itself. Like, what do you expect them to find at the end of the day? Like, there had to have been damning evidence that would have been leaked out by someone else, probably to find out any allegation, have anything corroborated during this whole situation. It is what it is. I think there's a ton more to still happen in this thing. There's other coaches, obviously, who still have everything going on with Brian Flores. There's more people who have joined in his lawsuit right now. There's a lot going on, but I'm not necessarily surprised about the Hugh Jackson thing. Like, I kind of this was probably the outcome we were all expecting. I know the Browns said they gave all their documents up. I'm sure they gave the ones that they wanted to, but it is what it is. It's like I said, it's not a surprising situation. It would have been more surprising if they did find something. Then we would have had a massive situation going on, because we still got to figure out what's going on there with Miami with the whole Stephen Greer thing and the paying and with Brian Flores. Like, there's still a ton going on, but at least this is one loop we can probably close off for right now in this chapter.
Well, there was also a thing with the Brian Flores lawsuit. I thought I read somewhere that Brian Flores and everybody, they're not happy. I think Roger Goodell's an arbitrator, one of the arbitrators in the case, if I'm not mistaken.
Who knows?
I read
Roger Goodell, with how much money he makes, he better be.
I mean, you think? I mean, hey, I did like his sit down with obviously the guy that cuts hair. Like, he does a very famous TikTok series where
I saw that. That was good. He
walks around and gives out free haircuts and like talks to people about life.
He did one with Kayvon Thibodeau also, where he cut up his dad and we kind of chopped it up with Kayvon. I like that one too.
Wow. See, that's what it's all about, though. At the end of the day, it's the conversation, which was crazy because
exactly.
He was asked about, what was your dream? He's like, my dream, my goal is to always be the commissioner of the NFL, which, he said there's only been 8 in the last 102 years. So he said that's really like a big lofty goal, very unrealistic. So I was like, oh, shoot.
It's not a thing I would ever want to be, though. I don't want to be the commissioner. Like, there's things I would change. Don't get me wrong, but I don't need that pressure on my daily life. I'm good.
He goes,
it's like being the president. Like, it's like the worst job in the world. I don't want to be the president.
No, I don't either. He says, have I missed the dog piling? I love the profile picture, by the way. Tyrann Mathieu throwing his hands up at Daniel Sorensen giving up a touchdown.
That's a good one.
We're going to see that there. John Paul says, breaking. The Browns didn't throw games. They just sucked. Laugh a lot. Embarrassing all around. Yeah, they did.
You're wrong.
That was bad. But it put him in a position to get Baker, which obviously now Baker, a lot of people are having a conversation.
Yeah.
Will Baker play for the Browns even if Watson's suspended? And it's like me kind of having an idea on Baker. Baker's going to be like, nah, I don't think Baker will ever play for them again, even if they wanted him to. I don't think he would.
I don't know. Like, I can see one of two ways. I can see Baker just want to be petty and say, no, you didn't want me then, so why do you want me now? But at the same time, he's kind of in a no-win situation. The biggest thing that could have happened for him was if someone would have traded for him before the draft, or like during round 1. Well, that wasn't happening. It's just, like I said, you either go back and have to suck your pride up and go back and play for the team, and hopefully if you play well, then you might be able to get traded at some point. I think right now he's just waiting for the unfortunate injury that seems to happen every single year to a quarterback, and a team that all of a sudden needs one, they can go trade for him. The similar thing, like I think that Gardner Minshew has always been waiting on right now since he came to the Philadelphia Eagles. He's kind of wanting that next chance to be a starting quarterback again. The same thing what's happening right now with Jimmy Garoppolo. There's a couple of the quarterbacks. I think Baker's kind of in that same category. Like, you're waiting on that first injury, and all of a sudden he can come in, step in, and look at the situation where that quarterback isn't necessarily a locked-in starter, then he can try to secure a spot on that team. But I don't think he wants to put back on that orange and brown again.
You know what? I'm going to throw out an interesting hypothetical theory, and I hope it comes true because I think it'd be very great. The XFL will announce one of their starting quarterbacks will be Baker Mayfield. Another one will be Gardner Minshew. The other one, Jimmy G. Could you imagine those three going to the XFL?
I would hate going on Twitter. I would hate Twitter.
That would be huge. I would love it. I think it'd be very entertaining. The XFL would obviously win this war, but we'll talk about the USFL Week 3 here in a little bit towards the end of the show because there's a lot to digress. Not to mention Birmingham still, number 1. Tommy, I know it's been a rough week for you. But
it is what it is.
Could you imagine, though, if Baker, Jimmy G, Gardner Minshew, Drew Lock potentially all ended up being starting quarterbacks in the XFL?
I'm not going to say I can't see it. I'm not going to say I couldn't see it. If you want to be a starting quarterback somewhere, if you're not going to make it in the NFL, you got to.
And Darnold will end up there too. He'll go up there after next year. He'll be in the XFL.
All right, screw it. I mean, I'm not going to say I wouldn't watch, but
I would watch the hell out of it. I think that would be great.
But that's the thing is, like, we talk about these spring leagues. What's the crux of the issue of all these teams? It's the quarterback play. Well, you're not going to get better quarterback play than guys who were just literally playing backups or starting in the NFL. So you're not going to get better than that, but I would be surprised if those guys wanted to make a move like that. If Colin Kaepernick isn't willing to go out there and play in the USFL right now, I have a hard time seeing guys who are actually in the NFL right now wanting to also take that step back. Like, you make it to the NFL, I'm not trying to go anywhere else. Like, I would rather play and be a backup on a team and still make millions than make like the $4,500 a week that the USFL is paying.
Yeah. Jan Paul makes a very great point here. Baker can play and has personality. He would be a fit. Baker is getting unfairly treated because of how other teams are mad at the Browns for Deshaun's contract. Not only that, too, it's, I was very shocked. I was very shocked that Baker wasn't traded at all in the NFL draft after round 1. I figured Carolina would be a team that maybe he would end up at. But,
if there was ever a draft to trade for a quarterback instead of going through the draft to find someone, it would have been this year.
Yeah, spot on. There were 2 punters that went before a majority of the quarterbacks went. Like, how wild is that?
I was all for the Matt Araiza, though. Like, I'm totally cool with that.
And he dropped. Like, we thought he was going to be the first one gone. Nope. He was
like, I don't scout tape on punters, but you heard a lot of people talking about, like, he was probably the more pro-ready punter. He kicks a very high ball compared to Araiza, where it's more of a line drive. And apparently his drop is a little bit more consistent. I don't know. Like, I don't scout the tape on punters, but I guess a lot of people necessarily weren't surprised that he was not the first punter off the board. But it's going to work well in Buffalo. Like, if you want to hit a more of a line drive ball when that wind's going, go for it. Like, he can punt through whatever wind is going on. Even that wind tunnel tornado game that we had last year against the Patriots, Matt Araiza will be just fine up there.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see, what goes on with Buffalo. Look, they got Josh Allen. They're probably not going to be punting too much.
That's the downside. Yeah, he went to a team that's probably not going to punt the ball that often.
It'll be very rare. Very, very rare. Like, if they're on their own 50-yard line or they're close to it, midfield, they're probably going to go for it on 4th and short, 4th and 5.
Wouldn't you with this team? Look how talented that offensive room is. Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Dawson Knox, Jamison Crowder. You got Khalil Shakir on this team. Devin Singletary. You throw in James Washington. Like, not James Washington, sorry, but with James Cook. I think they're in a pretty good shot if they want to go for it on 4th down. I would bet on that team.
We'll see how it all goes here for the Bills. But let's get into some other NFL news. As we've talked about, like, remaining free agents, Tyrann Mathieu has signed with the New Orleans Saints. Now, for the Chiefs, we talked about one key player they had, Melvin Ingram. For the Ravens, Justin Houston, some veteran guys. Both guys, obviously, in their careers have played for the Chiefs at some point, which has been very interesting. The Chiefs and the Ravens each put a UFA tender on Melvin Ingram and Justin Houston, respectively. So right here, it says here in the notes, if either player signs with a new team before July 22nd, which is a couple months away, or for the first day of training camp, whichever is later, those signings would count towards the NFL's compensatory formula, so they could get a compensatory pick. If they don't sign by the deadline, teams would retain the exclusive negotiating rights to the respective players at 110% of the 2021 salaries per the CBA. So it's like, all right, in this situation, because you go out and you get George Karlaftis, if you're the Chiefs, do you still maybe look at bringing back Melvin Ingram? Like, you could have Karlaftis on one side, Melvin Ingram on the other, Chris Jones, Frank Clark.
Yep.
As your
I'm absolutely bringing it back. Yeah. Like I said, it's like right now these guys still have time to negotiate with these other clubs. But like, if I'm the Chiefs, like, I would have brought back Melvin Ingram way before now. So I think this feels like maybe they're hoping to get a compensatory pick if someone does pick him up. But I would have signed him a long time ago. We talked about this several different times this offseason, especially when we were going over the Chiefs, like the free agency kind of outlook. Like, their defense changed so much when they brought in Melvin Ingram when it came from Pittsburgh. Like, they were able to do so many more things to kind of help get their defense to a point where, hey, yeah, we are one of the top tier teams in the AFC defensively. Like, for me, I don't see a reason why you wouldn't have them back here. We talk about depth being so critical in the NFL. Like, you've got to have more defensive line depth, especially. And I think the Chiefs did a lot of things to address that. Also, you look at their first round draft pick this year at pick number 21, where they brought in the cornerback Trent McDuffie to then bring in George Karlaftis at pick 30. I think it was those are two great moves. But if it was me, I'm absolutely bringing back Melvin Ingram. But I would have done it a long time ago. Like I said, I was surprised he was still sitting out there on the board at this point.
Yeah. It says yes, 1,000%. Or that's not 1,000. That's 1,000,000%.
That's a lot of zeros. That's a lot of zeros of yes, which I would agree with.
For me, I don't know why I said 1,000%. I just felt like that was the easiest thing for me to say.
It's 1,000,000.
There we go there. Anyways.
It's more zeros than I can count to if I take off my socks.
There's another guy who gets after quarterbacks that just signed a brand new contract extension here today, and that is Atlanta Falcons defensive lineman Grady Jarrett, signing a 3-year deal worth up to $51 million, and 34.5 of that is guaranteed, Tommy. Grady, as we know, going back to the year that the Falcons were in the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots, I just remember watching him manhandle the interior of that Patriots offensive line, getting after Tom Brady. But unfortunately, we all know how that game ended for the Falcons there. But Grady Jarrett, man, he's been a little bit of a force on the interior in the NFL.
Yeah, he really has. You go back to when he was a Pro Bowl back in 2019 and 2020. He was a fifth-round draft pick out of Clemson back in 2015. Became a starter in his second year. And in his time with the Atlanta Falcons, played in 110 games, started in 95, recorded almost 360 tackles, 26 and a half sacks with 5 forced fumbles. Guy has been one of the better players for the Atlanta Falcons. It's a team that kind of needs additional help. They did bring in some help in the offseason this year with edge rush. They signed Lorenzo Carter and drafted Arnold Ebiketie and D'Angelo Malone. Atlanta also signed defensive tackle Vincent Taylor, which I think that also kind of helps. They have a bunch of pieces on this offense and kind of move Grady Jarrett around, whether you want to play D tackle or defensive end. He kind of did both of those last year in this defense. So I think it just kind of helps out all around. Like I said, we talk about depth. This is the Atlanta Falcons team. Like, from top to down, this roster is in shambles. Like, I think we all kind of admit that. I think them and the Chicago Bears, they're two teams that just need help everywhere. So lock up Grady Jarrett for multiple years. You have some other chess pieces you can move around on the defensive front, which they're going to absolutely need to try to stay in some ball games, try to generate a little bit more pass rush, try to stop the run a little bit better than they did last year. Yeah, this is a great move for me. They did have some other losses. I mean, when you lose Foye Akolum, I think is how you pronounce his last name. I'm awful with names. I'm white.
Foye Aluakon to the
I can't do anything outside of like Smith. I know he signed with the
and 93 tackles for Foye last
led the NFL. Yep, led the NFL.
Unbelievable. That was ridiculous. And also, like 193 in one season? Like, golly. I mean, your defense.
When you're always on defense because your offense can't stay on the field, yeah, you're going to start racking up tackles. God.
That was, dude, I just remember watching him. I was like, man, he's going to be one of the top free agents. He goes, Jacksonville loaded up with some guys I feel like can contribute. But it's like, for them, they also double dipped.
The Jags team still is just weird to me.
I mean, that's a weird thing because they double dipped in the draft at inside linebacker, which is super, super odd considering that they made that move. Because, hey, look, I think that when you look at Chad Muma, I think, and Devin Lloyd, I think those guys will start day one for that defense.
I think they absolutely could. Yeah. And it's a team that has talent. Like, this is a team that has talent defensively. They're just young. If they get better, then this team could be really good defensively. And if the offense picks up under Doug Peterson, you've got the quarterback, you've got the weapons, you've got Travis Etienne, who hopefully comes back and be what we thought he was coming out of Clemson, coming off his injury. You still got James Robinson for when he's ready at that point. They brought in, I think it was Snoop Connor too, in the NFL draft for another little bit of white for running back depth. You got the receivers, you got Dan Arnold on this team. You also brought in Evan Ingram, so you want to run some 12 personnel. You're more than welcome to do that. Laviska Shenault wasn't even used last year. Marvin Jones is going to be a really good receiver. He's one of the better fits last year coming out of Detroit that I thought it kind of worked out pretty darn well because when Trevor Lawrence wanted to take a deeper shot, Marvin Jones is a guy he kind of turned to several different times. And then you also have the Christian Kirk, who they're paying a crap ton of money to. So you've got the options. I think it's a team that can surprise a little bit. I don't think they're going to be that competitive, but I think they'll be a tough out in some games. Like they're not going to pull off what they did to the Buffalo Bills. I don't see that one happening, but I think it's a team that's going to be improving. That's the biggest thing you can ask for right now in Jacksonville is just to get better.
I mean, you can't get any worse than Urban Meyer. So with Doug Peterson, I like their chances that they have there. DJ
just stay out of the chop house.
Says, when is Cody's last show? My last show will be next Friday the 13th. Yep. Whoa, that's a weird Friday the 13th. Yeah,
it would be Friday the 13th.
How dare he leave us to make his life better? Get a tremendous opportunity. I appreciate.
I'm saying the same thing. How selfish.
I know.
Shame.
I'm still going to be here in the comment section on PFN Daily when you guys do it. When you and whoever else decides to jump onto this here show,
yeah,
it's gonna be fun.
Those are all questions we got to figure out at some point.
I'm gonna have to be a Broncos fan. Hey, you know what, my man? Look, like I said, you can't get better Broncos coverage anywhere else besides yours truly. And not to be like an egomaniac, I love bringing like an objective point of view on the good, the bad, and everything else. Like I have no preference either way. I just like to bring straight truth to it with football facts there. But anyway,
that's a hard thing to find in media, especially with someone who's covering an actual team, because everyone wants to sugarcoat it and put a bunch of fake news stories out and not tell what it is.
The thing that I've learned in this industry since coming into it, like there are a lot of people that have like a shtick, right? And I don't want to have a shtick. I just want to be me, like 110% authentically me. I love football. Football is literally my life. It has been my life for quite some time, but being able to look at something that's happened in the game or look at the end result and maybe use my experiences as a player, as a coach, as someone who's been around football administration to kind of provide perspective on that, which I feel like you don't get a lot of these days. So that's my approach. And, I think one thing I try to do really well, especially on Twitter, which was rough yesterday, I tried to respond. I literally tried to reply to every comment.
When I saw that tweet blowing up, I was like, good luck. You're going to take a while on this one.
Dude, it took a while. Like I got to a point, I think I responded to about 95 to 100 replies, but I started getting tired. I was like, oh man.
You're like the grandma to Billy Madison. My fingers hurt. Well, now your back's gonna hurt because you're doing landscaping duty. Yeah, that's called arthritis. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm out here. That's why.
Pretty soon you're gonna be like that dude. Like, it's my strong hand.
Oh gosh, good old scary movie reference there. I love that. Moving on here as well. We saw a surprise during the NFL draft. We saw the Cleveland Browns trade away one of their players, Troy Hill, back to his old LA Rams team, which is very interesting because we had talked about, obviously, the loss of Darius Randall for them this year was a huge blow for them defensively, opposite of Jalen Ramsey. But now it's like, okay, now you have Troy Hill. So it's going to be more than likely Jalen Ramsey, Troy Hill on the outside here for this Rams team. They get him back in the NFL draft. I mean, it's like, all right, hey, welcome back home.
And it's actually interesting because he actually literally talks about it. He goes where he said, like, I think the draft pick is what kind of caught him off the guard most. Like, he said, like, I feel disrespected is what he told the LA Times. Definitely motivated to come out there and show what I can do. Definitely plan to come out there and play with a chip on my shoulder like all NFL players do. Like, if you don't have a chip on your shoulder, you probably shouldn't be here.
How many times is that on a bingo card there? Like, that's got to be
that I feel a chip on my shoulder.
Yeah, the chip on the shoulder. This has got to be.
It's the same thing. It's like, yeah, he's a lunch pail kind of guy, first man in, last man out, coach's son, like all those stupid things that we always hear. Like, I'm so sick of these things. If we put a drinking game on that, my liver would be more shot than it is right now. But he was talking about it when he was like, when I was in Cleveland, I always found myself trying to compare things to how they were done over in LA. I don't know if it was just me trying to compare as far as what a win that of a winning program, or if I was just missing everything happening over there. Yeah, FOMO was real when you're watching the team you just left will go win a Super Bowl because you thought that the Browns were going to be in that same situation, being there a title contender out of the NFC, out of the AFC, and clearly that didn't happen. So yeah, I'd probably want to go back too. He was going to make a lot more money in Cleveland. I believe he was almost doubling his annual salary by going over there, but the Rams are good for a reason. And the Browns had already drafted his replacement in Martin Emerson. They got him in the third round at Mississippi State. They also have Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, and Grady Williams on this team. So they have plenty of cornerback depth already at that point, which is something you very much need in the NFL. So Hill to the Browns was, I guess you want to call it, quote unquote, expendable for the most part in terms of the depth chart. And I think the Rams needed it. The Rams were a team, hey, look, like, we were not going to be surprised if they went out there and signed one of the big name free agents, especially like a J.C. Jackson. We could have seen that one happening during the draft. It wouldn't have made sense because it's the Rams. They don't care about the salary cap. They don't care about the picks, and they'll spend the money to get the best team possible. Cornerback was a little bit needed on this team, and they bring in Troy Hill. He's going to fit right back into the scheme. He knows how this organization is ran, and especially knows all the stuff defensively. I think it's a good move, honestly, for both sides. The Rams get back a really good corner, and the Browns just added depth to what should be a good team. It'll be a better team whenever Deshaun Watson's on the field.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, the Browns will be an interesting story to follow this upcoming season inside that AFC North division, which now it's like, all right, hey, we had thought, before the draft, okay, hey, the Ravens might load up. And then it's like, now we're questioning what the hell the Ravens have been doing.
The Ravens loaded up, though. The Ravens had just a stupid good draft. Like, what? The Ravens are one of those teams. It doesn't
help if your quarterback is pissed at you. So that's something.
I get that. But if you look at the needs, you bring in Kyle Hamilton. They let Kyle Hamilton fall to him. Then Linderbaum falls to him again at that point. And then you're able to bring in David Ajabo, who used to be with the same guy in Michigan. I think Travis Jones is a good fit. You bring in Daniel Falalele, who at that point is the heaviest player drafted in NFL history. Jalen Armour Davis is a solid corner. Got him in the fourth round. I think Charlie Kohler, I think that makes a lot of sense too, because the Ravens love to utilize their tight ends. Mark Andrews is going to be arguably the top target on this team. He's going to have a career year, which is weird to say coming off a 1,300-yard season. Rashad Bateman's going to have a step up massively on this team too. But like, the Ravens had a pretty darn good draft. It's just, can they make up for the loss of Marquise Brown? But during the draft, like, they actually kind of crushed it.
Yeah, it just depends on if Lamar feels like he wants to stay in Baltimore going forward.
I think he does. I don't see Lamar Jackson wanting to leave. It's just when he wants to open up trade negotiations. With contract negotiations with him and his mom, because apparently they both work together on that, which is a weird one to me. Whatever. But yeah, I don't see Lamar Jackson going anywhere. Like, they'll give him whatever money he needs. He's too important to this team.
Hey, that's the Tasha Mack, in the game on BET, and also the game they rebooted on Paramount, which fantastic show. Loved it. Obviously, with Malik, Derwin Davis, Jason Pitts and Dip, all that stuff. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
I never watched it. No.
What? All right.
Never watched it.
You got to watch it. It's a great show. Love it. The game on BET was such a good show. I really enjoyed that. But sticking on the cornerback path here real quick, San Francisco 49ers bringing back Jason Verrette. And look, a move that I like for them. I feel bad for Jason Verrette, and I felt bad for him for the last 3 seasons. He's dealt with an Achilles injury. He's dealt with an ACL. He's dealt with various knee issues for him. And when healthy, like he was a very, very solid cornerback. And I remember he had that 1-year kind of prove-it deal for the 49ers and unfortunately got hurt. But they're bringing him back, which I think is a good move for them. They need a veteran guy in that room because one of the things I noticed with San Francisco last year in their secondary group, their DBs didn't play bad. A lot of them just had a hard time on making a play when the ball was in the air. They had a hard time finishing, and they missed out on several interception takeaway opportunities throughout last year. Verrette, if healthy, I think will be a very good pickup for them, and I think will contribute, a significant role on the defense. Now the hope is, can he stay healthy? I mean, coming off an Achilles, coming off an ACL, man, that is so tough to come back from because look what happened with Klay Thompson in the NBA for the Warriors. He tore his ACL in the finals, and then he tore his Achilles, and just this past year, he just came back, and it took him a while to get back in the groove. And for corner, where you're pivoting, you're taking short, choppy steps, you're planting and cutting a lot, it's definitely an area of concern.
Yeah, I guess the one thing is they don't need him to be the number one because they did bring in Tre'Davious Ward during the offseason from the Kansas City Chiefs. So they do have a little bit of extra depth out there. But like, if he stays healthy, it's a great addition for one of the teams that we're expecting to be one of the better teams in the NFC. It's just an added boost if he can stay healthy. And I hope he does. The guy's had just an awful time trying to stay healthy out there. So yeah, hopefully he can kind of get this figured out. Because I mean, it's a former first-round pick. So I mean, it's hopefully he can kind of turn his career around. Yeah, it all comes down to injury. There's not performance on the field.
Yeah, no, we'll see how it all goes for him, especially in that division. Look, you have a division as DK Metcalf, which obviously is like the perfect segue into our next topic of discussion. Real quick, I'll answer Jan Paul Edward here. Any news about James Bradberry? Nothing that we have seen or heard. Obviously, the rumblings before the NFL draft indicated that he could be traded before or during the NFL draft. Obviously, that never formulated. I don't think at this point now, Tommy, I don't think he gets traded now. Now, he could be an NFL trade deadline guy in season, though. That's something.
Could he be a cut? Could he be a cut candidate?
What's he anticipated to make this season?
$21.8 million cap hit on the for them in this year.
And so, if they cut him with a post June 1st designation, what does that do for them?
Oh, that is a very good question.
Let's see here. Pull up the handy dandy notebook.
This is I'm awful when it comes to salary cap stuff. This is why I love people.
Oh, it's all good. I think it's either Spot Track or Over the Cap that does the post that will give you the post.
I think we need to go Over the Cap. I don't see it on Spot Track.
Over the Cap NFL.
Post June 1st, 11.7.
All right. What would his dead?
They could save $10 million by cutting him at pre June 1st.
How many years does he have left on his contract?
Voidable 2023 year.
Okay, so
essentially almost last year.
So how much dead cap would it count against them?
Dead cap this year?
Yeah, if they cut him, even though they'd save about 10 million.
They would save 10. You're going to eat 11.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it worth it at this point for the Giants? Because I feel like for them,
yes and no. Obviously, you would much rather trade him. But if teams think that he could be a potential cut candidate and you just want to go out there and get him in free agency at that point,
someone's going to pounce on that.
Why would you go out there? Yeah, why would you not just pounce on that instead of giving up capital, go out there and get him? They've got some other options. You've got a Dory Jackson, but you look behind him, it's like, who's going to really want to step up into that number 2 role in this team? I don't really know because it wasn't necessarily like the Giants addressed the position during the draft,
Well, there's that. You don't have to be necessarily too worried right now about the Dallas Cowboys because they have CeeDee Lamb and James Washington and, Noah Brown at this point.
Jalen Tolbert. They brought in Jalen Tolbert from South Alabama.
Tolbert. But then it's like, okay, the team you probably really have to worry about having a cornerback with
Eagles.
The Washington Commanders and the Eagles.
It's Eagles.
Both. It's both.
Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown.
And then you added Terry McLaurin. And then you add in, who did they just draft? It literally just stopped my head.
Oh, Jahan Dotson?
Yeah.
Well, we're still trying to wait too. Or are they going to have back Curtis Samuel? How healthy is he going to be?
They will.
You got Logan Thomas also coming off of an ACL tear. Then you throw in J.D. McKissick and Antonio Gibson, who can kind of work out of the backfield, but that's more of a nickel and linebacker problem than a corner.
These dudes, Giants would not be. I don't think it'd be a wise personnel move for the Giants right now to cut Bradberry, because
unless they're expecting Cordell Flott, the cornerback that got out of LSU in the 3rd round, to take a massive step forward. And hopefully to move him maybe from a nickel position up into the primary outside. I don't really know.
Man, wild times. But kind of speaking on the wide receiver point there, DK Metcalf, and he's been firm in saying, I don't believe that we are rebuilding in Seattle. I believe that we will be competitive. I believe that we'll be back to kind of where we used to be. And obviously quarterback was a huge issue for them. They're going to have Drew Lock and Geno Smith battling out this year. But DK, he's looking to get a contract extension, Tommy.
Yeah, and it's a guy that absolutely deserves it. I mean, no question about it. His play's been a touch of times inconsistent, but it kind of is what it is. He's too much of a threat to not deserve this type of contract. And he's kind of saying, look, I will say we're trying to get something done. He was what he told Shannon Sharp during a podcast on the Club Shea podcast. He goes, I think I'm going to get something done in Seattle and be in Seattle for the next couple of years. I think it's an interesting way to put it. I'm not saying like I want to spend my career in Seattle, but for the next couple years, I would like to be here. I don't know. I could see DK Metcalf being on the move. I wouldn't be surprising me, but at the same time, it's like if you're going to try to be a target for a quarterback next year, if you think you're going to be in a bad team, let's call it what it is. Seattle Seahawks probably going to be a good team this year. If I'm looking to be in the CJ Stroud, Bryce Young market, or whoever the next quarterback is going to be that steps up from that point, I need to give him weapons. Tyler Lockett's getting old. DK Metcalf is a guy you can build around to be your number one, obviously. So I would not want to be, if I was Seattle, I'm not trying to get away from DK Metcalf. He's a guy you're trying to build your wide receiver room around. He's young and a ton of upside, and you know how good he can be on the field, especially in the red zone. With him and Russell Wilson were just electric when they were trying to get together. Really big step forward all these past couple of years compared to his rookie year when it was just surprisingly awful in the red zone. It was like a 25% completion percentage when targeted in the red zone, which is a little bit more surprising given the size and catch radius that he has and the accuracy of Russell Wilson. So like it's whether it's Drew Lock or whether it's Geno Smith out there, you need DK Metcalf on the field. I would not be trying to get rid of him if I was Seattle.
No.
At this point, like I said, you're past the draft. Like you got to do whatever you can to lock him up. But look, it's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take 20 to 25 million. We know that right now. That's the market right now for a receiver. That's why A.J. Brown is not in Tennessee anymore because he was looking like 16 up to 20 with incentives. Said he would have stayed if it was a 22, but he's going to get 25 per year over there with the Eagles. Like that's kind of going to be the going market. And look, the salary cap's only going to go up. I know Brandon Beane said he was thinking to be more in lines like the 218 to 220 kind of range. We can see the cap pushing 230 up to 250 here pretty soon, honestly. We're still recovering from the COVID kind of area. We're not back to where we were like pre-COVID in terms of the trajectory we thought the salary cap was going to go with all these added TV deals coming, especially with Amazon bringing their money in. Like the cap's just going to go up anymore. So yeah, DK Metcalf, if you want to sign a couple years now and then re-up it 2 years later and try to take advantage of that increased salary cap, that's a move I can see coming down the line. But I don't see him getting out of Seattle.
Well, let's talk about Matt Ryan. Obviously, he's a brand new Indianapolis Colt there, but he recently appeared on a podcast and said that there was a pretty good chance he's still with the Falcons if the Falcons did not pursue Deshaun Watson, which, we could spend a whole podcast talking about Deshaun Watson and that contract there. But kind of an interesting point here by Matt Ryan. Like he was very involved in the process, and then he wanted to do what's best for him. Like for the fact that the organization was looking for somebody else, Matt Ryan, he was very vocal about it, saying, I get drafted to this organization. I envision staying my whole career here in this one place. And they've done a lot of great things there. And look, Matt Ryan still has plans to play maybe up to 10 more seasons if he continues to do the right thing with his body. That's one thing he mentioned on the Pat McAfee show. But he said, hey, there's a good chance I stay in Atlanta if, in fact, they didn't pursue Deshaun Watson. So I guess this helped facilitate things a little bit. So for them, they lose out on Matt Ryan. They lose out on Deshaun Watson. They settle for Marcus Mariota, who's trying to get another chance to make a name for himself in the NFL.
They also bring in Desmond Ridder.
I know. Will Ridder be the guy, though? Like, what will Ridder add to the table for a Falcons team? Obviously, yes, you go out and you add a wide receiver there in Drake London. That's going to be a really good addition. But it's like with Marcus Mariota, he's not a guy that's going to test the ball downfield a lot. But I think that when you look at this team right now with Kyle Pitts and with Drake London now, I think they're going to get a ton of volume when it comes to the short to intermediate passing game, because that's really where Marcus Mariota, he excels. And then that department right there.
It's also where Drake London excels too. Like a lot of people consider him to be a vertical threat. He is a contested catch guy, and yes, he can absolutely specialize that. But that's not all of what he does well. Yeah. I think it was 98 of his targets last year. Like right on 90 to 98 of his targets last year were between behind the line of scrimmage or up to 9 yards and a dot. Like the guy can work in short to intermediate range, and you have Kyle Pitts, and these are two guys you can kind of work if you want to run Kyle Pitts inside in the slot and move as like a big slot tight end with Drake London on the outside. You can do that. You can flip-flop him too. Like Drake London played in the slot when he was also at USC playing alongside Michael Pittman and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So he brings that versatility. You've got these two giant like skyscrapers in terms of players. They're massive throwing windows. Like neither of these quarterbacks have always been considered to be some of the most accurate in terms of their ball placement, whether it's Mariota or it's a Desmond Ridder. So you're giving these two massive catch radiuses, And the Falcons didn't do anything else in terms of terms of wide receivers. Like, you're looking like call 7 targets a game. Like, that's well within reason.
Yeah.
That's 120 targets right there on the spot for Drake London in his rookie year. So like, I think whether it's whoever's going to be the starting quarterback, I fully much believe it will be Marcus Mariota, and they're going to give a year for Desmond Ridder to develop. Then you're going to have, I think you got 2 really good receivers, but yeah, I think Matt Ryan, he would have been an Atlanta Falcon. I don't think they had any need to give him. Like I said, they lost out going after Deshaun Watson. Like, that's all that they did. Like, what I think will be interesting is, like, watch these next couple of years. Let's watch and see what happens, the ripple effect of these teams who went in and tried to get Deshaun Watson and who missed out on him. Like, how do these teams move forward that didn't get him, and what happens to the Cleveland Browns? Because when they start having to pay all that money to Deshaun Watson on this fully guaranteed contract, how does this impact some of these teams? Look, the Indianapolis Colts, you got Matt Ryan. You're happy. Not only do you have him, they also brought in Alec Pierce from the Cincinnati Bengals to be that number 2 on this team, alongside Michael Pittman. If Paris Campbell stays healthy, you've got some really good players on the team. Look, Matt Ryan last year almost threw for almost 4,000 yards with no one outside of Russell Gage. I mean, because I don't even hardly count Calvin Ridley because he didn't play for that much last year at all. Until he went on and said he needed to leave the NFL to focus on his mental health. Like, they had nothing there on that team, like outside of, like I said, Russell Gage and then Kyle Pitts. Like, that's it. Like, the guy is still very good at football. 36 is not, it's on the older side for a quarterback, but like I said, we've seen guys play for quite some time. I know Jim Irsay is saying he doesn't view this as a 1-year kind of deal. He wants to have Matt Ryan for multiple years down the line, 3+ years. And I think that makes a ton of sense because the Colts are a team ready to win. They just need a quarterback. I think Matt Ryan can help facilitate that winning what they want to do there. And they're going to be competing with the Tennessee Titans trying to win this division.
Well, speaking of the Tennessee Titans, for them, we heard in the pre-draft process that they would be looking to the future to find the eventual successor of Ryan Tannehill. That was something that was out there, so it wasn't a shock that later on they took Malik Willis. What was a bigger shock is that they took Malik Willis as late as they did, and no other NFL team picked up Malik Willis. But Ryan Tannehill said that the team did not tell him or inform him ahead of time that they were going to be selecting Malik Willis. And being a good guy that Ryan Tannehill is, called Malik Willis to congratulate him. But it's like, in situations like this, does this sour maybe Ryan Tannehill's perspective on the Tennessee Titans here? Not to mention trading away A.J. Brown. You don't have Julio Jones on this team. This is a team that you're looking at. You got Robert Woods right now. You're kind of concerned a little bit. And yes, you get Treylon Burks, who's obviously going to be a fantastic guy there, but he's a rookie. It's going to take some time for him to get acclimated a little bit. How's Ryan Tannehill right now feeling about this Tennessee Titans team?
I think Ryan Tannehill right now, I think he probably sees a light at the end of the tunnel on his tenure with the Tennessee Titans. He's on the last, he only has 2 years left of the 4-year, $118 million contract he signed back in 2020. He's got a $29 million base salary this season, a $38.6 million cap hit. But next season, like after this year, there's no guaranteed money on his contract. So the Tennessee Titans could very well, hey, we have Ryan Tannehill this year. We're still trying to win. Ryan Tannehill gives them the best chance of winning. No doubt about that. Then Malik Willis being groomed behind a veteran quarterback who's kind of gone through the ups and downs, especially when he moved and came to the Tennessee Titans. All of a sudden, really flourished. And what got him this contract was after that one really good year that he had when he got away from Adam Gase. You've got Malik Willis who can kind of learn behind him. Like I said, he still has the highest upside of anyone in this draft class at the quarterback position. I still fully believe that. I love what the Tennessee Titans did by taking the shot on Malik Willis. You give him a year to learn behind him, which I think he needs, and so pretty much every other quarterback in this draft class does. I think Kenny Pickett was probably the most pro-ready, but at the same time, like, do we want to throw him out there? If he wins the job outright, yeah, give Kenny Pickett the job. But everyone at this point, like, if you're a rookie quarterback, give him a chance to learn. Don't just throw him into the fire from week 1 and watch him fail. Like, that happens too damn often for my liking, honestly. Yeah, give Ryan Tannehill out there. Like, you don't have a ton of options. They also did bring in Kyle Phillips, which I pretty much say he's like a longer Hunter Renfrow, that kind of player coming out of the slot out of UCLA. So they're going to be really reliant on 2 rookies on this team. And you're also relying too on Robert Woods. How quickly is his recovery progressing after that torn ACL he suffered midseason last year? Like I said, I think it just more or less signifies the light at the end of the tunnel for Ryan Tannehill, and then he'll probably be moving on. So I think this will be Malik Willis' team in 2023.
Ooh, okay. I kind of like that. And look, it gives the Titans the ability to run that zone read QB keeper that they ran in the playoffs against the Bengals with Ryan Tannehill.
Good luck stopping that. Yeah, do I want to stop Malik Willis or do I want to stop Derrick Henry? Good luck.
That'll be a fun thing to watch between those guys potentially there. So that is kind of an exciting thing there. Tommy, as we get into the final portion of today's episode of the show here, my friend, USFL Week 3 results are in the bag here. And I know we'll talk about Week 4 coming up on Friday's episode of the show. But The Tampa Bay Bandits beating and edging out a win against the Houston Gamblers in a comeback effort where early on Houston had the advantage. They were in control of the game, and then they gave up plays. They turned the football over, and then Tampa, they just capitalized on it, and they won with a walk-off field goal 27-26. Very interested to see maybe how some of these games are kind of panning out a little bit, because a couple weeks ago, Tampa Bay looked like one of the worst teams in the league. And Jordan Teamu had gotten benched, and we were wondering, okay, shoot, what's that going to be like? And we thought the Houston Gamblers were going to be a really good team. They were deceptively good. Well, now they've kind of fallen back down to earth a little bit here, and obviously a heartbreaking fashion for them 2 weeks in a row. I mean,
Teamu's like, he really stepped up, 21-36. 251, did throw the one pick, also had a touchdown there, adds a little more on the ground too, adding 29 yards and a touchdown on 6 rushes. That's, to me, like, he's probably still one of the better quarterbacks in the USFL. I don't know if we can definitively say he's the best one out there still. So I think Kyle Sloter, I think some of the other guys have really kind of stepped up out there in the same league. Baby. Yeah, Jamar Smith is absolutely taking a massive step forward, which really he needed to, especially given the injury to the other quarterback. I think Teamu still has like the highest ceiling of these guys, but I would trust Todd Haley to kind of get this situation figured out, which is a very weird thing to say. I'm trusting Todd Haley, but in a league like this, I think it just takes time to get it figured out. So yeah, Tampa Bay Bandits winning. Like it's a close game. That's kind of what we needed. We needed to see some good games last week. The USFL was still rough at times to watch, like no question about it. But at least it was a competitive game throughout the whole game. And then, like I said, it's set up for the second game of the day at 8 p.m. And it was like I didn't watch the game this weekend, especially not on Saturday. The draft. I was working like. Yeah, maybe y'all should have just done a bye week because no one was watching the USL this week. Like I was working, so I didn't get to see these games. I got to see some of the highlights and some of the lowlights, which I think we're about to relive right now.
Yes, we are, and that is the Birmingham Stallions remaining as the only undefeated team in the USFL after a 22-13 victory over your your New Orleans Breakers, my Birmingham Stallions.
Yeah, and the sun shines on a dog's ass every once in a while too.
Hey, that was a good game though, back and forth, very close.
Oh, it was a great game, yeah.
Jamar Smith's downfield passing ability, he might be the best downfield passing quarterback here in the USFL. I mean, which isn't saying much. There's not many guys that I feel like can consistently do it. So for him, they're finding a way to do it. But the story is of the Stallions defense and Scooby Wright, defensive MVP of the game. You can make the argument. If he doesn't win defensive player of the week this week, I don't know what the hell to tell you there, but they had a goal line stand. He was monumental in forcing a safety for them. That defense was swarming all over the New Orleans Breakers this week.
Yeah, I think the one thing I saw too is like Kyle Sloter, like the Stallions had, I believe it was like 4 or 5 dropped pick 6 opportunities in the first like 3 quarters of the game itself. Like they could have blown this game absolutely out.
Damn it, Sloter.
And they could have been better too, honestly, if Jamar Smith just would have been more accurate. Like 25 of 38. I know a lot of people are talking about the way he releases the ball. He's very much a hand underneath the ball, and so it kind of sails instead of getting over top on it. So you saw him miss and sail a lot of passes where he probably should have got a better throw on those. But I mean, still, look, you got the dub. That's what matters if you're the Stallions. And this was, like I said, this is the game. These are the 1 and 2 teams. I think you still probably keep them in the same way, just kind of probably flip the order. I think these are probably still the 2 top teams in the USFL. Just this is what's going to happen. I think if they played 10 times, it's probably going to be like 6-4.
Birmingham winning? No, it'd be Birmingham 10 times out of 10, buddy.
You got 1 of 1 so far. I'll give you that. We'll see what happens. They play later on again this season. Let me see. When do they play again?
It's got to be like week 7, week 8.
They will match up again. Yeah, week 8. Boom. Week 8, they will play again.
And then, hey, depending on what the playoff structure looks like, they could play in the playoffs again. And
if they played first round, that'd be such a waste. That'd be such a waste.
I feel like that would be like an interesting championship game potentially.
Yeah, I think it would be just based on what we're seeing right now. I mean, they definitely seem like these are like the 2 teams I think they're probably going to be the ones we could see in there. I think Tampa Bay would kind of be in there as well. But I would not be surprised if that is just a preview of what's going to be whatever the hell they're calling their championship game.
It's a home game for Birmingham, regardless. So, anyways,
but that also that signifies all like the other games dead.
Dead. It was horrible.
Yeah, it's the only time you're getting a crowd there is when Birmingham plays.
And how many times, and I think this is an issue too. How many times we've seen quarterbacks get injured in this league, and it's because offensive line play, it's horrible.
Yeah,
it's inconsistent. And that was evident in this Michigan Panthers versus Pittsburgh Maulers, which I was very surprised that Michigan put the spanking on them the way that they did, 24-0. I expected more out of Pittsburgh, but like Paxton Lynch gets hurt in this game. You just see a lot of guys just taking a lot of unnecessary shots at, the quarterback position there. This was like the biggest surprise. I didn't expect Michigan was going to win 24-0. So I think it kind of skews things. I still think they suck.
The Michigan Panthers won by only throwing 72 total yards between the two quarterbacks, and they won 24-0.
That's so weird.
I will never pick the Pittsburgh Maulers to win a game. I haven't done it yet. I'm not doing it now.
Yeah, they've been off to a rough start there. But then, like the other game too, the final game, the New Jersey Generals against the Philadelphia Stars, it was also a little bit of an entertaining game. I know our good friend Matt Infante is very happy with New Jersey. 24-16 victory over the Stars in this one. But just once again, you're seeing a lot more action. You're seeing takeaways. You're seeing some drama. But it's like, okay, three of these games this past week were pretty entertaining. The fourth one, the Pittsburgh Michigan one, just kind of represented everything that's wrong. And like Tommy, I'm coming to the point because I used to play it. It looks a lot like and feels a lot like semi-pro football. That's exactly what the USFL strikes me as.
It's a
semi-pro football with a TV deal. That's all it is. That is literally all it is.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's dead, but the door is wide open for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to bust in like it's a Kool-Aid man and take over spring football. Like there are decent players on these field. Like don't get me wrong about that. There are some decent games, but like I said, it's that offensive line, the quarterback play, and these rosters are so shallow. I believe it's 35 active, 42 on total with seven other guys being practice squad guys. Like that's not a deep enough of a roster.
No,
that does not work in professional football.
The one centralized
especially if you're trying to be legitimate. Like you've got to have more. Yeah,
that's horrible, man. That's the thing I think is kind of frustrating is that you have one centralized location. Obviously, the Birmingham team will have the most fans because hey, people want to attend something that has the name of the city that they live in. Nobody's traveling from outside the U.S. to come watch a USFL.
No, I'm not paying $600 for a plane ticket. Like I'm not doing that to go watch these games. As much as I like the Breakers, like if I don't live where I can drive and go close to watch these games, which I would not mind doing. Like if you were in the area, yeah, I would absolutely go in attendance and go watch these games. Like it's still football at the end of the day. Like it'd be fun to go to the game, but like at the same time, like I said, I'm not going out of my way to go make this a must-see event. Like I'm not doing that. Like the football, the brand of the game is not good enough at this point to deserve to have all these fans to be a nationwide event. It's just not there.
Here's an idea that I do have for the USFL. Instead of having all the games in Birmingham, right? Let's say you hold a championship in Birmingham. Okay, that's fine. But like during the regular season, why doesn't the USFL go do a nationwide tour to different cities, right?
Like 1 week we're playing all four of our games here. Like say all four games are in Nashville, then all four games are like in New York kind of area. Then we go all four games in Texas and then LA or whatever. And yeah, it makes sense. Like, okay, what if you just did this? What if you just play like all four games? Like literally, you've got 8 teams. We're going to play all of our games 1 week in Tampa, then in Houston, then in New Orleans. We go to Pittsburgh. We go to Michigan, New Jersey, and Philly. Like, why don't you just do that and then throw in a West Coast game in there just for the funsies? Like, that would make a ton of sense.
I'm telling you.
Logistically, it'd probably be a little bit of a nightmare. But, I mean, at least you would know ahead of time, hey, these teams will be here in this location, and you're good to go. Like, you could figure that. I actually really like that idea.
See, maybe they should. I don't know. Hopefully they don't hear me because I don't want to be hired by the USFL. Anyways, Brandon,
you already got another job online. You don't need something else.
He says, "Did y'all see the picture where Jameson ain't even smiling in the picture with Aiden Hutchinson, where the caption said, "When you get drafted and Jared Goff is your quarterback"?" I have not
seen that one actually.
I have not. Make sure you send that to us or something on Twitter at PFN365. But Tommy, a lot that we covered on today's episode of the show. We'll see what happens a little bit more. I will be out on Thursday, folks. I have a doctor's appointment I have to be to at the time that we're doing the show. So to get some blood drawn, I will not be here. Tommy will be here. And I think it's Dalton.
Dalton will be back.
So Dalton Miller, you guys will be able to see him as well. I know Outlaw will be very excited about that. But with that said,
thoughts on the NFL draft. I'm sure he's got a couple.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it'd be very intriguing if you asked him, like, how are Cowboys fans feeling about their draft and their choices that they made?
That's absolutely going to be a problem. Whether I bring it up or not, that will be discussed. I guarantee you.
Boom. I'm excited for it. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode, PFN Daily, live here on youtube.com/Pro Football Network. Make sure you smash the subscribe and that like button so you never miss out on a day's worth of NFL news, content, and coverage. Speaking for my co-host, Tommy Garrett, I'm Cody Work. We'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of the show.